Have we helped our children decide who they are and what they've been called to do? If God's called you to an out of the home career, and he has, or a ministry, he's not called us to stay home our whole life. If he's called you into something, he'll prepare you for it. Are you raising up your kids to lean into God and to believe that? And do they even, what if our kids don't know how to ask help, right? Like you two are intentional, diligent, involved parents. And I've seen you with your children. I think your children are safe to say, hey, Dad, I'm a little bit confused by this. Would you walk with me into this new situation? So are our parents homeschooling that? Are we available?
Thanks for checking out Culture Proof. I'm Miki.
And I'm Will.
And today we are visiting with our friend, Dr. Kathy Koch, who is the founder and president of Celebrate Kids. She is also the author of her most recent book, Parent Differently. And that is kind of what we're going to talk about today. I read an article recently that talked about the problems that Gen Zers are facing in the workforce. And I want to talk about the gap that maybe is present in our kids. And are they really ready to live in a world beyond their own? They are so used to living in their own world that they're struggling, it seems, to live in a world beyond themselves. We'll talk a lot about that. But first, let me say a huge thank you to BJU Press Homeschool. BJU Press is our go-to for helping us as we disciple and train our kids at home. We trust them to help us as we ready our kids to live in this world. And indeed, that's what we're going to be talking about today. Are we giving it our all? Are we doing all that we should be doing to ready our kids to live in this world? We do trust BJU Press Homeschool to come alongside us and to help us press a biblical worldview into the hearts and minds of our kids. We know that you can trust them to. Visit our friends today over at bjupresshomeschool.com. That's bjupresshomeschool.com. Dr. Kathy, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
I'm very glad to be here. Thanks for the invitation, and I'm doing very well. Crazy busy like you, and it's just the way that we want it, right? We don't want to be sitting around and twiddling our thumbs. That's not the call upon our life. So
that's right.
Very, very grateful for God trusting me, and we're just going to keep moving forward. It's been a good season.
Yeah, I don't know. When you said twiddling thumbs, that sounded good for a second. Like I thought, I don't know, maybe twiddling my thumbs would be nice one day. I don't know, just to have it as a break. No, but you're right. When there's a call that God has on your life, you want to be walking in that calling, and you want to do that for his glory. In fact, speaking of the glory of God, I was reading this article here on the website Inc., and this article was polling some of our companies, some of our popular companies, and there's some new information out about their willingness to hire Gen Z. In fact, this information suggests that Gen Zers are not cutting it in corporate America. And I thought you are just the person to talk to about that. I want to share just a little bit of the information from the article and then kind of have you just take it away, your assessment. What is it that you think is really going on? I know in Parent Differently, you deal with shaping character and how we can do that for the glory of God. And so I'm wondering if maybe what some of these companies are experiencing is a lack of character shaping or having been shaped by the parents before they launch the kids. Here's how the article goes. Gen Z's interest into the workplace or entrance into the workplace hasn't been entirely smooth. Roughly 60% of companies have cut Gen Z employees that they hired this year. That's according to education and career advisory platform Intelligence. Of the 966 businesses surveyed, 75% expressed that their young workers had unsatisfactory performances. Respondents believe that their post-grad new hires lack motivation, 50%, and professionalism, 46%, and have poor communication skills. 39% of these businesses polled responded with that information. All of this is weighing on employers as they think about hiring post-grads next year. Only 15% are unsure if they are planning to hire post-grads in 2025, which that may be a little bit encouraging. But I think overall, when you're looking at these numbers and talking about this generation, and by the way, for our listeners, when we talk about Gen Z, this article defines them born between 1997 and 2012. Dr. Kathy, what do you make of this when you hear stats like this?
Yeah, thanks for bringing this up. It's frightening, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm not surprised at all, and I'm glad you clarified the age groups. So these are maybe 24 and under or so. So we shouldn't be surprised that they're struggling to communicate well. They've been allowed to text their whole life. They avoid, human contact, right? Whereas I think the three of us, if we had an option, like we jumped on the phone today when we were having a struggle with the technology rather than texting back and forth, 20 more times. And I'd much rather drive over to Tupelo and have dinner with you, than even
Yes.
FaceTime or, and I think, but for younger people, they're almost scared of people, some of them. And that again is because they don't have experience. They don't know how to navigate the silent moment in a conversation or, what if they get a no and they expected a yes? They don't know how to, say, hey, it's okay, or to ask a follow-up question that might have, been persuasive in the best way without, arguing. So not surprised about the communication part. Motivation, we've talked before about what the three of us believe and a lot of your audience, which is why I love being here. They're motivated for happiness, right? The technology has trained them to expect that things will go their way, that all will be well. And that's just not always the way that it's going to be. So here's the thing, you guys, to have compassion before we have judgment, right? To realize, and I'm not saying, somebody did anything wrong here. Like I bet many moms and dads and many educators, if they were educated in person, and they may never have been, they might have an entire educational experience that's online. But if people have tried to motivate them and educate them in the way the world works and they were disinterested, that's on them and that's a shame. If we did drop the ball and we didn't enter into conversations that would help to mature them, that's sad. But what I hear from a lot of parents is that my kid wasn't willing, for me to take him or her into a better space where they would learn about, a different type of motivation. So not surprised, am concerned. And will they treat every relationship this way? Will they treat everything this way? And frankly, that's not going to be good for them, and it's not going to be good for the culture.
One of the things that the article pointed out that I think is really worth us unpacking, that when you think about Gen Z and even Gen Alpha coming after them, they've kind of grown up in this world where they kind of get to shape their reality. They are almost conditioned, maybe conditioned is too strong a word, but they are trained that they should go into a space and change that space. So there's almost this feeling of like, we are transformers. We are on the cutting edge and the world is kind of waiting for us. But I think there is a reality that when they enter the workforce, they are not going into a space that is necessarily waiting for them to change every aspect about the way that they function. You've still got the CEOs are probably boomers or Gen X, and maybe even some millennials are in there. But I think when you think about Gen Z and what we are often communicating to them by way of this self-empowerment, this powerful message that we're giving to them, maybe we're telling them something that is not true about what the world expects of them. What do you think?
Yeah, another great analysis, Mickey. No, they're the generation of safe spaces, right? Where, college campuses, let's go to this safe space where we can agree to disagree, or I'm a gay man and I'm going to go here. I'm a lesbian woman. I'm going to go here. And nobody in that space is allowed to tell me that I've done anything wrong. That has not been healthy. We would believe the scripture, which teaches us that iron sharpens iron and that people ought to benefit from interacting with other people. And, one of the reasons that I think the three of us do what we do is to help people know what they know, to believe what they ought to believe, to reject the lie, and to persuade without debate, like persuade with love and persuade because, I love you too much to let you believe a lie. Yeah. But they've been so resistant, right? There's been so much pushback to so much of the way that, maybe older, more mature adults would behave that it's a really, really sad thing. So employers who choose to employ them have to be really alert to that, right? And so we employ and we train in the character things, right? Like if I was an employer back in the day, you didn't have to train character. You just trained in our workplace. This is the system we follow. In our workplace, this is where you log in and this is the expectation. You sign this document that I will represent the company well. And now if you choose to employ younger people, just, welcome them to the table and then be aware, right, that you're going to have to train them in some very basic skills because otherwise they won't make it.
So who does the burden rest on? The employer
Yeah.
or, because they may say, well, that's too much. You should come here and have some type of character and things like that. Should we look at, I guess, the home, or should we look like where does the burden lie in getting our kids ready, for the workforce and things like that?
Oh, Oh, that's such a good question. What if I said good old fashioned mom and dad? I do think that, parents know their children best, and parents are hopefully raising up their children for an expectation of their tomorrows, that they launch well, they don't boomerang back home, that they begin to manage their finance and their relationships and their future. So again, way back to when a child is 10 years old, if you notice that a child is arrogantly entitled to believe what he believes and he wants his way. He goes to the nursing home and he doesn't want the meatloaf that they're having lunch with the grandma. They think meatloaf's an old lady dish. They don't want meatloaf and they throw a fit and they're 10. You better be all over that. And you better call sin, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to
Yeah.
say this, right, you guys?
Yeah.
So that was disrespectful. That was unloving. That was inappropriate. And then did we coach the child in the car as we're driving over to the nursing home? And, grandma invited us to lunch and we're going to eat with a whole lot of old people and they're not going to serve Fruit Loops, they're not serving, whatever it is that you think, you need or you love or you deserve. So have we trained them up to accept that things won't always go their way, nor should they? Have we given them any muscles in which they can be respectful anyway? So parents, could I put it on the educators as well? If you send your children off to school, and this is a big advantage of home educating your kids, is that you see it. You see it. They're right in front of you 24/7, 365. And you see that they're disrespectful. You see that they ignored the piano teacher's wisdom. You see that they're not well loved by a soccer coach because you do let them out of the home. Homeschoolers don't,
Right.
stay home, lock them down. No, and then if you do send your kids to a different school setting, boy, you better be alert to the values there. Because it's all about values, right?
Yeah.
What do we expect of our kids and what do we value about them? And have we helped our children decide who they are and what they've been called to do? If God's called you to an out of the home career, and he has, or a ministry, he's not called us to stay home our whole life. If he's called you into something, he'll prepare you for it. Are you raising up your kids to lean into God and to believe that? And do they even, what if our kids don't know how to ask help, right? You two are intentional, diligent, involved parents. And I've seen you with your children. I think your children are safe to say, hey, Dad, I'm a little bit confused by this. Would you walk with me into this new situation? So are our parents, homeschool or not, are we available? I'll say one more thing before I kick it back. Some homeschooled children have told me that it's very difficult for them to admit they need help. Because, mom and dad are my teachers. Mom and dad are my mom and dad, and mom and dad are my teachers, and I want them, and they're very good. And Dr. Kathy, I don't want them to think I don't think they're good. And yet, there's something I don't know, but if I ask them, then they're going to know that I think they haven't done a good job, and I can't let them know they haven't done a good job. No, you have to let your kids know that, hey, we're available, especially for the firstborn. You're the guinea pig. Let us know how this is going.
No, it's so true. I'm thinking and processing as you're talking. As always, I'm thinking and processing. And I think so many of our listeners, if they're listening to the Culture Proof podcast, they're thinking that you're on to help them. You're on to help us. Okay. That's what it always is. We invite you on so that we could get some coaching in. But one of the things that I'm processing and thinking about is that parenting, and this kind of goes to what you've written about recently, but parenting differently really kind of requires us as parents to take a little bit of a risk, right? And what do I mean by that? I mean, if I'm going to correct my child, we live in an environment that has almost kind of trained parents how to be soft in our parenting. So we want to say, that's great, even when it's not. We want to say, oh, you should get a trophy because you showed up. And we don't say, like, I remember, being able to hear it. It just, you didn't even think about it. Someone said, hey, man, that stinks. That was not your best effort. I want you to get out there and I want you to do it again. And you didn't need counseling for that. You just got out there, you know what I mean? And you tried to do it again. And I think about some of the messages that our kids, like I think of our kids, our teenagers in particular, some of the messages that they are drawing out from their environment that has normalized a softness that we as parents are working against the grain to iron that out. We're working against the grain to say, no, it's okay. I can tell you that that's bad.
Yeah.
Like, first of all, we have to teach them how to receive that they have not done their best, right? Which was something that we didn't have to be taught. We just, if somebody said, hey, that's not your best, you can do better. we accepted that as a healthy challenge. We almost craved that. We wanted to be challenged. We didn't want someone saying you get a gold star when really your star should be red or should be
Yep.
green. We wanted to earn it. And I feel like a lot of our kids these days, and this may have some bearing on what we're seeing in the workforce, they don't necessarily want to earn the gold star. They want the gold star because it says an achievement that maybe they did not achieve. Your thoughts on that, Dr. Kathy?
Right. No, total agreement. They're being raised again by technology that's teaching them happiness is their right, choice is their right, feeling like they're the center of their own universe, right? So again, when we correct, no, I didn't do anything wrong. I'm amazing. You must be confused, Mom. I'm the amazing one. And so that's where laziness comes in. And this again, so I'm going to just be bold here, like always with you, because you invite it. What do parents expect from their children? What do parents want from their children?
Mm-hmm.
Parents, especially young parents, can be very guilty of very low expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And they create fragile children. They don't challenge them to the plate. They allow them to make mistakes and not be obedient and to not fulfill the obligation, and they just let it go. Oh, that's okay. You were busy. We'll do it another day. Well, yeah, compassion's good. Your kid is busy. Let them do it. There's a place for that. But if you as a parent don't believe well of your children and don't understand the expectation that God's placed upon you as parents to raise up all that is within a child, then you have low expectations and the kids, they fall down. They stay down. And I'm going to say again, Mickey, the earlier you see it as a problem, the better, right? If somebody's listening, and we have a lot of compassion for you, there's no shame here. This is hard. These days are hard. The culture's chaotic. Kids are not inviting correction, so I get that. But if you're listening and you've got an 18-year-old and you realize you've been afraid, and you realize that calling him to account and challenging him to be all that he can be with God's creative intent, and I'm disappointed in the way that you responded to your potential employer. If you would have worn that to work, and I was critiquing you, which is my right as an employer, I'd look at that and go, doesn't have a high standard for himself. You're presenting, well, first of all, if you're a believer, you're presenting the gospel of Jesus Christ with everything you are and everything you do.
Right.
Secondly, you represent our family, right? So this is where, some of your listeners may remember my grandfather was mayor of my city growing up, and we represented him, and I'm glad we represented him.
Yeah.
I think that if I would have had, quote unquote, just my parents, I think Dave and I would have been good kids, but we were representing the mayor of our city. We were very aware when we went out that it was not about us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think today's kids are guilty of wanting it to be all about them. And then I would also say we would be like them if we were their age.
Yeah.
I want to be careful here, but they've been raised by something that has taught them it is all about them. But that's a lie from the devil. It's all about Jesus Christ. He is the center. They are not. And we have to push back. And the earlier we push back, the better, right? Because you establish habits and perspectives as they're still with you for many, many more years. And they see how you're living your life as a married couple, as individual men and women. And they watch that. And they watch, okay, why are mommy and daddy successful podcasters already? They've only been podcasting for about a year. Why do so many people pay attention to my dad and my mom? Kids are looking. In your case, I know what your kids can answer. You guys are hard workers. And you've worked to connect with people who are like-minded. And we could point to 10 things probably the Lord has called you to do that has resulted in success. Your children are watching you. Anybody who's listening, your kids are watching. Are you calling them to more? I'm sorry that I'm talking so much.
Oh, it's so good.
I'm passionately concerned that mediocrity is being allowed and that parents are afraid to say that is unacceptable. Now, here's the thing, one more comment. If you say to a child that is unacceptable, if you say to a child, I'm concerned that mediocrity and laziness has become, an identity for you when I know there's so much talent that hasn't been tapped into yet. If you say that, then you have to walk with them into a new understanding.
Yes.
It is not appropriate that's
good.
called criticism, where you simply point it out. So, prayerfully, people are listening and realizing, oh, yeah, I could get better at this. Invite your kids to the conversation. We love you so much. We're going to point out a few things that might be difficult initially, but we're going to walk with you into success because it is necessary that you grow up.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah, I'm sitting and I'm listening.
Of course. No, always.
Look, that's really good, and I think that's very valuable wisdom.
Yeah.
Because I know there or a lot of people in that same position, seeing maybe how the culture settles for less, like, oh, you can just get by with this and that. But we know that God has put into our children a higher standard, and the first standard is living as unto Him, but also, fulfilling those things that God has placed in them. And we as
Yes.
parents, we pull that out of them. We see it and we help them to nurture those things. So that's very, very good advice.
I was talking with a professor here recently at one of our local colleges, and just talking about how we were navigating, picking what we were going to teach our kids, and what aspects of what they're going to learn, and really trying to be prayerful about that, believing that the Lord has designed them for a purpose, and trying to really feed and fuel that purpose. And this professor said to me, just in passing, she said, well, I'll tell you what, as you're thinking through how to educate your kids, I'll just tell you what I'm seeing these days. And she goes, these kids are failing at the collegiate level, at least, she said, because they have poor time management skills. She said they cannot manage their lives. She goes, that they're used to having everything just kind of revolve around them and carved out for them. And she said, I am seeing them not make it, not succeed, because they don't know how to say no. And now this is a couple weeks ago. I'm having this conversation with her, and then fast forward, I'm reading this article in preparation for this conversation, Dr. Kathy. And one of the things that these companies are pointing out is that they are not delivering on their promises. So, I've hired them, and then they interview some Gen Zers in this article, and one of them says, okay, yes, we don't know how to say no. So we accept a lot, but then we don't follow through, and we can't deliver on all of the things we promised to do. Dr. Kathy, how do we work right now to train our kids, to help them understand how to manage their time, and even how to say no, how to create boundaries where they realize that they're not supermen or superwomen?
That's so good. It's my values that cause me to say yes to things and no to things. So do children know their values? And it's also our identity. I've been called to something very similar to the two of you as a speaker, author, ministry leader, somebody who's looked at, and she's got wisdom and all that. So that's my role, right? To steward my time so that that is not stolen from me, from the devil who would love to steal it from me. So do your children know their values? Do they know their identity so that they know where their lane is, right? That this is my space and this is what is going to allow me to accomplish something to the glory of God. Yeah, we have to talk to them about happiness isn't your right. It's not what'll keep me happy. It's what will fulfill you, right? Oh, you guys know, to live on purpose, right? When I look at the depression in our culture, and I look at the sadness in our culture, and frankly, the suicidal, ideology. No, it's you got to have purpose. It's frankly, I'm tired. It's been a long couple of days, but purpose drives everything for me. I get out of bed, and because you're called to something bigger than yourself. Do we give kids that belief? Do we live abundant life in front of them? And then yes and no. They don't know how long something took them. I can almost guarantee you that if you watch your child work on something, let's say it takes him an hour to accomplish a school assignment or 40 minutes to fill out a job application, ask him at the end, how long did that just take you? And the chances are good he doesn't have a clue. They're not good at that internal clock because time is irrelevant to them. They stay up all night. They don't get much sleep. Fun is their goal. And you and I know that, and I'm going to say something, time might be the most important thing we have. I think it's Dave Ramsey might be one of the people who says it's your most important commodity. Once you've spent it, you can't get it back.
Yeah.
Like there's no rewind.
Yeah.
And so to teach our children, these are the minutes you have. And, again, your reputation is going to come from that. Your skill set is developed in those minutes. So can we help when they're younger estimate? I remember even when I was a university professor, students would say to me, Dr. Kathy, I haven't gotten very good at predicting how long an assignment will take. So I have this amount of work to do by next Tuesday. And and I taught some study skills strategies. So they were asking me, what are some strategies that would help me look at an assignment and become more aware? Okay, this will take probably 4 hours to do well. can we help kids with that? Can we help them evaluate and predict so that they're more aware? I think that's another practical thing that we could do.
So what would that look like? Okay, can we get even more practical? So for me as a parent, and I think especially as a homeschooling mom, right? Because and mom and dad, because we have the opportunity to allow them to sort of unpack their tasks, right? Unless there's
Yeah.
one that is time sensitive where you say, hey, no, I want this done by this day. And if you don't get it done, then you lose your privileges. That creates a pressure that I think a lot of parents are nervous to put on their kids. And, but I recommend it. I think it yields results to put a little bit of pressure and say, it's due by this day. You got to get it to me. And understanding that life happens, but that should be the exception and not the rule, right? So help us walk through this practically, Dr. Kathy. Would you say that we need to create those moments of time management opportunities, or should we just look for them to happen naturally in life?
Oh, I love that idea of creating opportunities. So I have a 30-minute egg timer. I have a 1 minute, a 5 minute, a 30-minute egg timer. And sometimes it's beautiful sand. It's a gold color sand, beautiful glasswork in this egg timer. So every once in a while, I'll challenge myself to do something in 30 minutes because I can get very lost in details. I will overanalyze until the buzzer buzzes. I'm not necessarily proud of that. But so when I'm really busy, I'll flip over the egg timer over here and I'll watch. Now I also have been known to set a 30-minute egg timer, or 30-minute timer on my phone. I was just with the guy that runs my ministry. We were together for a number of days working and recording, and he gave me an assignment and left the room and went and ran an errand. And I set my timer to 30 minutes because I wanted to focus for 30. I can multitask with the best of them. And I wanted to honor my guy. I wanted to honor Wayne, who had given me a legit assignment. Kathy, I need you to process this and figure this out. And I set the timer. And the whole time I was working and typing and thinking, I knew there was a timer to my left that was going to buzz any minute now. That challenged me to stay focused because a lot of us, we don't focus well. We have so many things to think about. You got 6 kids and you're podcasters and you're authors and you're thinkers and you're a pastor. And oh my gosh. So what helps us focus? And maybe we ask our kids that question. I think we as adults could become more aware of how long things take for us. If I were working with little kids, I might say, how about 1 minute per spelling word? I'm going to set the timer to 7 words. I'm going to set the timer to 7 minutes. Let's just try 7 minutes, 1 minute per word, where you're going to say it, you're going to spell it out loud, you're going to spell it with your pencil. And let's just try it. Just do that work. Oh, I got done so early. Well, what could you have done with your time? Oh, I could have done it again. Yeah, that's good. Do you think that was necessary, or were you really confident? Well, Mommy, these 2 words I got wrong. Oh, well, then what could you have done with your extra time? Those 2 words, not all 7 words. So that's self-evaluation, right? And
So
weak children, fragile kids who have been helicoptered, they can't do that. They expect Mommy to tell them how they've done. And that will be the curse of the generation. That's a strong statement. But if we over helicopter and over protect our children, they do not need to self-advocate. Daddy, I need help. And they're not self-aware. And this is why they turn in work that they think is stellar and it's not. This is why they go to work 20 minutes late 2 days in a row and they don't think it's a big deal. They haven't thought through any of that because they don't have experience and they don't want to. They're just happy all the time.
Oh, look, I love that. Man, praise God for discernment, right? Like just today, I had a conversation. I say a conversation, just a brief exchange with our 8-year-old. And as you know, we use BJU Press. We love BJU Press. You can pause the program if they're having an issue. And so we have video instructors, but we're there with our kids, right? So we're making sure that they really understand what's going on, especially when they're little, because we want them to have a firm foundation. And so I just said today to our 8-year-old, because he had kind of gotten into this habit of pausing the program. Pause the program if you need more time. Pause the program. And so I said to him today, you know what, buddy, you don't need to pause it anymore. You got it. I said, it's time for you to just keep the pace, keep going. And he kind of looked at me just for a split second, almost like, you don't know that I can. And I just kept my game face on, like, we don't need to pause the program every second. And, he got through the rest of that without pausing the program, Dr. Kathy. And I thought, thank you, Lord. Now, look, if we got to a point where he needed to pause it and I could tell he was getting frustrated or he was starting to agonize over something or a problem or something like that, then yes, we're going to pause it. but I saw a crutch, oh, I can pause the program. So I'm going to pause the program. And I think that's what a lot of us are doing as parents these days. We are pausing the program in life with our kids. And probably it's time for us to just say, you know what? We don't need to pause the program. We need some real pressure to prepare our kids to live in this world.
Oh, just let me celebrate that. So that's intuitive, insightful parenting. It's a mom who's alert and aware and is willing to get a little bit of pushback. That was brilliant. You know why? Because kids don't know what they're capable of until they're challenged to show up. They're not. Even adults, back to, again, whether I was teaching or coaching or being a professor, perfectionistic kids who think that it's going to take them forever. They turn the page and there's 20 problems. It's going to take me forever. They think that their excellence is caused by their slowness. They think that they're over analyzing and the repetition of the problem is necessary for them to do well. That's the pattern. That's that's what they have fallen into. And you guys, maybe 2 years ago, they did need extra time to work the problem because math did not come easily to them and they had no math facts memorized. Now they have math facts memorized and they have 2 more years of experience. And ideally, they have learned that they can work at a better pace, but they don't learn that unless mom says you can do it. I'm so proud of you, Mickey, because we don't know what we don't know. And you were available, and then I bet you celebrated, look, I was right. And it's not about you being right, except that it's okay for you to say I was right. Because I want children to recognize mom and dad know what they're talking about. So if you were to say, look, you could have just said, man, I'm so proud of you for believing me and trusting me. Thank you, son. Look at your excellent work. And then you say, you've gotten so much smarter than you were even a month ago. Way to go. So we credit their choices, we credit their brain, we credit their character, and we do challenge them to step up. I think that's really good.
Oh man, glory to God. I mean, and that's what I said. I said, buddy, you're killing it. I said, you're getting smarter every day. Like I'm so impressed by what you're doing. But you know what? There is that moment of taking that risk, Dr. Kathy. And I think those are the parents that you're speaking to. I'm one of those parents, right? Where you feel that risk. Am I going to mess up my kid because I don't allow him to just go at his own pace? But if I take that risk, what if the kid is ready to kind of go a little bit faster, work a little bit harder, do a little bit more? I think that's the spot that we're trying to get to with our kids. And again, and I know that you would echo this as well. The Lord is with us. We're not just doing this in a vacuum. We're not on our own. Dr. Kathy, tell our listeners where they can get your latest book, Parent Differently. When we talk about building character, how they can connect with you and your ministry. I feel like if they've listened to our podcast for any length of time, they already know. But just in case they're listening for the first time, tell us where we can connect with you.
I would love to. May I say something real quick first? What I want moms and dads to remember, Mickey, is that you're not parenting for today. So that effort of, you don't need the crutch anymore. I know you're capable. What I think your children need is for you to remember you're parenting for the big picture. You're parenting for the tomorrows. So don't get stuck in the moment and be defeated there, but realize that help that you just gave your 8-year-old is going to launch him into a belief in himself, which is going to allow him to take feedback from other people. So I just wanted to comment on that. Yeah, I love being a part of Culture Proof. We are at celebratekids.com. You can find our podcast there and our online courses, and my books are all listed there. So celebratekids.com. I'm privileged to be a Moody author and privileged to be a part of your conference. And we just go where we're invited to go, and we're blessed by the people who are teachable. It's such a joy.
Oh, Dr. Kathy, look, I appreciate you. God has given you an incredible team. Yes. I'm grateful for Wayne. You mentioned, I'm so glad you shouted him out, right? Because he's doing incredible work. You guys are an incredible force, and we're so blessed to be partners with you guys in the work that the Lord's doing in this earth. This is not the last time. You are a recurring guest, and I think it's been far too long since we've had you on. So we're not going to wait this long next time. Dr. Kathy, thank you so much.
God bless. Thank you.
God bless you. When we resist those cultural trends that rival the truth, we remain culture proof. Until next time, Lord willing.